All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started with the next session. Let me first of all welcome Dr. Amit Porwal. Sir, welcome to the session. Do we have Dr. Partha Bishwas?
No.
I think Dr. Partha is not available. So I think Dr.
Good,
Amit
good
will...
afternoon, Amit sir. Myself, Snehasis. Can we start the session, sir?
Yeah, we start the session. So, welcome to the Scientific Committee Talent Search Ophthalmology with a different session. So, these talents, we already had conducted this talent search, and the top finalists are presenting again in this annual conference of AIUC, the Scientific Committee Talent Search Session 1. So, the first speaker is Dr. Gunjan Saluja. So, guidelines for all the speakers, your talk is for 4 minutes and we discuss for 3 minutes. So, Dr. Gunjan Saluja, please start sharing your screen.
Amit.
Yeah, we have a scientific committee panel over here, Dr. Somshila Murthy and Dr. Krishna Prasad also. So, welcome Dr. Krishna Prasad, welcome Dr. Somshila. A word from you all.
I think it is a very good. I think this session we have been waiting for last couple of days. I know that all young boys are doing extremely good job. This is the right platform to exhibit your skills, and hopefully the best will come out of this. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you, Amit. Just that I think that this is as scientific committee, we're very excited that we could have this session, and we look forward to all the young talent.
Okay.
Yeah, please start, Gunjan.
Yes. So very good afternoon to everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank the scientific committee for giving this opportunity again. So surgical training, as we know, is of utmost importance, and training of budding ophthalmologists and ophthalmic surgeries are skillful procedures which have a learning curve with the skills which need to be transferred from experienced surgeon to the residents and fellows. However, with the rampant of COVID-19 cases, the routine surgical procedures have almost come to a halt, and this has affected the resident surgical training the most. So our aim was to perform and practice the maximum number of surgical procedures on the animal eye model and to develop a new model, that is a do-it-yourself model, which will be a cost-effective model to practice the basic steps of phacoemulsification surgery. So coming to the animal eye models, goat's eyes are easily available in our country and they are inexpensive. They can be easily bought from the local slaughterhouse and they can be mounted on the mannequin head over which various surgeries can be performed. So we have recently published an article about the various surgeries which can be practiced in survey. So I'll just give a glimpse of that. So corneal perforation repair can be practiced. So initially a corneal perforation was created in the goat's eye and then the repair was done. Following that, we can also practice recession, resection, and plication surgeries in the goat's eye, which have attached extraocular muscles as is indicated in the figures. Buckling surgery is another surgery which can be practiced. Besides this, trabeculectomy with releasable sutures, conjunctival autografts, and penetrating keratoplasty, evisceration with implants are some of the surgeries which can be practiced besides the conventional cataract surgery, which can also be practiced on the animal eyes. But during the COVID time, there were few days where goat's eye were also not available. In those times, one can practice suturing on these styrofoam. Now we thought to design a do-it-yourself model. We know that various artificial eyes like phaco eye and Kitaro eye sets are commercially available, but these are all for single use and are not cost effective. The cost is around $100 for 5 of them. So we decided to design a cost-effective model which can be used multiple times. So it was done using a rubber ball which was having a solid base and crater was created. The crater was such created to give, the depth in the periphery was less and at the center it was more. And the diameter of crater was around 9 mm. The lens was made with a combination of cornstarch, water and glue which were mixed together and heated for around 2 minutes. And cornea you can obtain either by the already used Kitaro eyes or phaco eyes if your wet lab has their accessibility, or it can also be prepared by using the nipple of milk bottle. So this is how the lens was placed with the rubber ball crater. And following this was the hardness of nucleus which was made. And then the cornea was fixed with a Feviglue and various steps of cataract surgery, including creating a trench, dividing the nucleus into 2 pieces, and following that, chopping can also be practiced in this model. So the residents at the end of this training session were provided a questionnaire, and we included 15 residents who were in the initial stages of learning cataract surgery, and they found the session to be helpful. Although the tissue handling experience was not similar to human tissue, but they did gain confidence in performing the surgery.
Ma'am, kindly
So
continue.
the advantages of phacoemulsification model which we tried to make was that it helps in developing the hand-foot-eye coordination in the young residents, and basic steps can be practiced. It's cost effective and can be used especially during this era of COVID-19 when goat's eyes are not available. But we cannot practice capsular access, and secondly, due to the solid base or the rubber ball, one cannot feel the posterior capsule or the nuclear fragment loss which is there in the human eyes. The
Ma'am,
model
Dr.
is
Gunjan,
being
please
modified.
conclude. Your time is over, Gunjan.
Yes,
Kindly
yes,
conclude in 10
it's
seconds.
over. It's concluding. So the do-it-yourself model gives an initial experience for cataract surgery, and it helps in promoting, in gaining confidence to the young ophthalmologists. Thank you.
Somshila, over to you.
So thank you, Gunjan. I think that was very interesting. We've seen part of this before, and it seems to be bigger and broader now. Yeah, lots of new surgeons would need such a model. I see that utility right away, and I like that you've used different little things to innovate and to make it more user friendly. So I guess you are still looking forward to version V3, V4, and so on.
Yes, we are trying to modify it further. So as we are able to overcome the limitations of the model, it will be soon, the results will be soon out with the results.
So this is totally your brainchild to start with?
Yes.
So right from the initial part and you're continuously developing it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So you have tried it yourself as well?
Yes.
And wonderful.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Gunjan, it is not only that during COVID era, this model is successful. COVID was just a igniting spark for you to come out with some innovation of this sort. This model is good in every medical college, every teaching institute for the
Absolutely.
hand-foot coordination. It is a very good model. It can be utilized at all times. So more and more versions to rectify all the pitfalls what occur will help. And this is a very good model, and it's going to be a boom for all the juniors who are going to start up with their own surgeries, whether it can be phaco or any other surgeries. Thank you, Dr. Gunjan.
Thank you, sir.
Any comment from any other CSC? Dr. KP, he is busy, somebody called up. So
What
we
should
go
be
with
the
the
cost? Sorry,
Yeah.
Amit.
yeah.
Gunjan, what do you think would be the cost for the setup?
The cost of this is around 50 rupees for making one model, and that can be used multiple times. So when the next time you are using it, it is around 10 rupees. So it is recycled. You can recycle it and use it again.
Fantastic.
Best thing, Gunjan, was see these artificial chambers are available, they are expensive, and all medical colleges can't afford. So if this model is put up in the YouTube, every resident by himself can learn and start practicing in his own medical college or a teaching institute. So I
But-
think this should be put up on the YouTube so that
So-
people get access to it.
You've already published it, right, Gunjan?
Yes, it has been accepted in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology and will be
Okay.
published in the upcoming issues.
Yeah, make sure you publish every aspect of it before you put it up in YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Gunjan. So we go ahead with our next presentation by Dr. Amrita Mohanty. Dr. Amrita Mohanty, please start sharing your screen.
Yeah, are my slides visible?
Yes, Amrita.
Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. In the next few minutes, I shall be describing about a novel corneal epithelial entity based on the 3 pillars of science. So one fine morning in my OPD, I encountered such epithelial lesion which did not have any textbook description. He was a young male with complaints of foreign body sensation, watering with blood vision in his left eye for past 30 days, and he was treated with antivirals elsewhere. He did not have any risk factors like use of any contact lens, trauma, foreign body, or any home remedies. Looking at the clinical picture, the cornea revealed a very interesting white, raised, ridge-like epithelial lesion, which was amoeboid in shape, with adjoining cornea taking punctate fluorescent staining. Rest of the adjacent cornea was clear with no edema, infiltrate, or vascularization. The tear film height and the lid agnesa were all within normal limit, so was the corneal sensation. I was very much amazed when I looked into the previous record, and he was treated by one of our colleague, Dr. Shrikant and Dr. Smriti at our institute, and presented with a very similar lesion, but this time located at a different site. Scraping was done and repeated twice, yielded no organism. The patient was put on topical lubricant and antibiotic. It kept on changing in shape with a centripetal reduction in size, ultimately healed with a faint corneal scar at the center at the end of 6 weeks. Coming at presentation in 2019, again we repeated the smear and culture, and we are not surprised that it was negative. So we started with the similar medical therapy. At the end of the 3rd week, we did a superficial keratectomy because the patient was very symptomatic, but to our dismay, it again recurred beneath the bandaged contact lens. So it kept on increasing in size. After 3 weeks, we removed the bandage contact lens and put the patient only with lubricants. Surprisingly, he healed with a very faint scar at the periphery at the end of 3rd month. The most common differential which came into our mind was OSSN, but the histopathology in our case was more of suggesting presence of squamous metaplasia, that is parakeratosis and dyskeratosis, and there was absence of cytological atypia, any deposit in special stains, and any infectious organism or inflammatory signs. Again, the ASOCT in our case was also not corroborative of OSSN. Infectious etiology like HSV1 and atypical mycobacteria were also ruled out. These are the similar corneal epithelial lesions which may present as that of our patient, as well as the other important systemic association, most common is being nutritional deficiency, was also ruled out. So when we searched the literature, there was only 2 isolated case report. Again, they could not be, they were not able to find the etiology. So we had a deja vu kind of experience when we again saw another case. This case was a 14-year-old kid. We did a superficial keratotomy early in this case, and again it healed with a very faint scar at the periphery. So when we discussed it among our peer group, from CLHI, we collated these 2 cases which had very much similar resemblance with that of our previous 2 cases. So to summarize, like looking at this interesting clinical entity, the first nomenclature which came into our mind was migratory epitheliopathy of unknown etiology. But as the etiology will be known someday, we shifted to the term migratory serpiginous corneal epitheliopathy. These 4 cases were collated and published in Ocular Surface last year. Still, we don't know the etiology and the exact course of the disease, and the gold standard of treatment will entirely depend on the etiology. The first patient has been followed up till now 18 months recurrence. So we will be looking into the confocal microscopy of these cases in the next slide. Yeah, this is my last slide. So thank you, Scientific Committee AIOS, to encourage this young talents like us. So I am hopeful that like we will get more younger like you and like be like you, like beautiful stalwarts like you. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrita. We are also young. Thank you for that.
Dr. Somshin, I said more younger like you all.
Yeah, I know it's a standing joke for you and me. So I think that your presentation brings to mind what, when we keep seeing patients in the clinic, and mechanically you said that it was also seen by other colleagues, but when we just keep seeing them and nothing strikes us, we treat the patient right then and there. But what you did is that you sat back and thought that what is this pattern and how is it different? So as you said, we don't have an answer yet for what is etiology, But the fact that you could identify this, and it doesn't seem to be only those cases, maybe more doctors would have seen such cases and hopefully they'll understand and benefit. So I think that is what is the talented part of this presentation and this discussion. Dr. Amit Porwal, anything you'd like to add?
As I told in the chat box, it is not my specialty, so I won't be able to comment on Amrita's innovation of whatever drug she has used. You are a better person.
No, not exactly
you.
about the disease, but about the fact that you use something in clinic and this may have often struck you. Dr. Amit Porwal also is very innovative. So it would have struck you that this is something different. So how does such a thought come to you?
So that's what you keep on reading, discussing with people, go on reading articles, peer-reviewed journals, and keep on discussing and attending conferences. And some thought will ignite, and you will come with some jugaad, some thought, and you will feel, let's try this, and that's how it works. So it works for me. I work for majority of them like that. So it was a nice presentation, Amrita.
Amrita, you use the term serpiginous, but when I saw a couple of those lesions, I thought no financial interest. I thought Nike. There was almost a tick mark over there. Okay.
Like I will definitely agree with Dr. Amit, because during this journey I have learned communicating with people, because I have received a lot of inputs from other people in writing this paper, and I would like to thank all of them.
That's a good way of expressing your gratitude to all of them who have helped you. So I think, Somshila, you have any more questions, or we go to the next presentation?
We can go to the next speaker.
So the next speaker is Dr. John Davis Akara from Kerala. He is going to talk on smartphone portable eye clinic system. So he travels. Somshila, you might know him. John always has a briefcase, like how the general practitioners in the olden times used to walk around, the family physician with a briefcase.
Right.
So he is a running ophthalmologist. He everywhere travels with a briefcase. So yeah, that is running. So John, over to you with your discussion, with your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the scientific committee for organizing this. It was wonderful that even during COVID times, we were able to work on our innovations. We were able to do so many things which we thought were not possible. So let me just describe what I have. So I came across this difficulty several times, that when you go and see a patient as a postgraduate, you don't have your tools with you. Whereas the medicine doctor, the physicians, they have their instruments, and we have all our instruments, huge instruments sitting in the OP. So that is why I came up with this. We have a briefcase full of innovative, cost-effective things. So this is a set of mostly do-it-yourself and smartphone-based portable devices for eye doctors on the go. And let's look at what is inside that. So this kit, it contains smartphones, because I do a lot of smartphone related stuff, a tablet, because you need bigger things also. Then that piece of paper was eye ruler, then the lenses, including an IOL, that is an IOL, the red-blue glasses for stereopsis testing, slit virtual reality headset, and a smartphone slit lamp. This was one very useful thing which I believe all postgraduate students should carry. This is a typical eye clinic. We start examining the patient, but before that we take history, general examination, and once we have the eye examination, we might go for higher investigations. And history taking itself, you can use several apps to help you, including the language apps such as I Know Tamil and I Know Bangla. Then, of course, general examination, you can use a smartphone just because. You can use your regular stethoscope and torchlight also, but this is the age of smartphones. Then for visual acuity testing, we have these visual acuity chart, which is on a tablet or an iPad and controlled by a smartphone by a Bluetooth. So that is useful. You could also use the Peak Acuity app, which can be done completely on the phone. Stereopsis testing, which is quite expensive to do. The charts are expensive. You can actually do it with the red-blue anaglyph glasses and the random stereogram testing apps. I do a lot of 3D photography with red-blue glasses. I have an atlas of ophthalmology in 3D. Then refraction, this is not my innovation. This is from MIT. You can do refraction testing with smartphones. This is an eye ruler. This is a ruler which will help you to take photographs of an eye. And I use an app called Image Meter. I presented in another conference to measure things on the eye, including the corneal diameter, interpupillary distance, and so on. And you can also measure the tilt. So eye turn is for the Hirschberg's test, and eye turn, eye tilt, and 9 gaze. So pediatric ophthalmologist, squint specialist will love these set of apps. Slit, I made this device, which is basically a slit illumination device. And once you have this on one hand and 20 diopter lens on the other hand, you become a slit lamp. You have the illumination arm being your right arm in the right hand in this case, and the viewing arm is your left hand. This is very simple and cheap to make. And this is the fundus camera. This is a smartphone fundus camera, which basically is a hand sanitizer bottle with a 20 diopter lens at the other end. This was made by Dr. Prithvi Chandrakant, my friend. And we also had, me and Dr. Bijurada had published this in 2016 with PVC pipes. So this is a modification of our original article. And this is a Kerakan mini top. This is a Placido-based topographer, which I tried making. And I'm able to get Myers like this, and with printed ones we'll get better one. Yeah, time is almost up, I guess. Virtual reality perimeter with the same headset I presented in 2018. So that is also part of the kit. And this is the kit. Thank you all. I hope this kit becomes a standard issue for all ophthalmologists, especially the postgraduate students in all medical colleges. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for summing up everything and for carrying the suitcase everywhere where you travel. John had a simple question. You have made so many innovations, so many jugards. Have you tried to make it commercially available to ophthalmologists?
Not commercially available. I have not made it commercially available. I haven't tried selling it yet. But I thought that if you just put the plans out there, people would make it on their own. That is what we did in 2016 with the PVC pipe fundus camera. But what happened was people are lazy. Unfortunately, people are lazy. If you just give the plans out there, open source, every step mentioned, there are very few people who will actually go and make it. But if you actually make it and give it to them, they are ready to pay a reasonable price to buy it. So I think I will go ahead with that.
So
I think
why
I
that
should do
question
that.
was asked you, John? See,
Yes, sir.
we have a retina surgeon in Bangalore called Dr. Jaitra. He
Yes,
came
yes.
up with Jaitra's imaging device.
Yes.
So it is nothing. I mean, it's very simple if you see. So a lot of your innovations are also very simple. But the problem is nobody wants to do it. So if you
Yes.
can come up with a low cost, low margin, low cost device, so your name will be more famous and it will be available to a lot more number of people than you showing your presentation. Suppose today I have seen your suitcase.
Yes, sir.
I don't have the time to prepare all this.
Exactly, sir.
I'm not utilizing it. I'm not remembering John. But if John is preparing this suitcase and tied up with some of the vendor and selling it at say 5,000 rupees, a portable briefcase with all the necessary ophthalmic equipment for a bedside diagnosis. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this will be more advantageous to me and your name also will spread. I think you should give a thought about this and start working on this.
I will do that, sir.
Last
KP,
year I
over to
was
you.
part of your presentation, John,
Yes, sir.
regarding the same presentation.
Yes,
I
sir.
I know that because of the corona you are delayed. Last time also you told that the same word that you will do this thing.
Yes,
So
sir.
you have to do it. Whatever Amit said, that I think you have to do it as early as possible.
Yes, sir.
It
I
shouldn't be,
realize that
John,
people
you have
don't
come
make
with
it.
so many innovations and now you are becoming lazy. Because KP Krishna Prasad hinted at that.
Yes, sir.
So, Somshila, over to you.
So, I know that we are all scolding you, John, but we're trying to push you into the next step. So exactly, I don't know if it's possible, but I think that AIOS is a platform who should, you should approach actually. And they have a lot of access to vendors. I mean, when I say they, I mean that the general office, the headquarters, has a lot of access to vendors. I'm just giving an example of, say, the kit that is used for endophthalmitis, which is available at all our secondary centers. So there's a kit with all the antibiotics, antifungal, and you just have to draw from it. It's already done.
The one from Aurolab, ma'am?
That's right.
Yes, ma'am.
So
We
something
used
like
it
that,
recently. Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
almost everybody, it's there all over. It's all over the country. It's available. So that's the concept. You could have something like that.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that we need to explore this beyond today's just, not get another presentation from you, John, and then you take your briefcase and go everywhere. But all the other medical colleges, and just like I said, like the secondary centers, everybody could have this briefcase with all its goodies in it.
Yes, ma'am.
I think
Yes,
you should shoot off a mail, and you have to do this.
I will proceed, ma'am. I
You
will
start off
definitely
with shooting
proceed.
off a
Yes,
mail
ma'am.
to the general secretary and to all the members of the scientific committee who were there, so we can also push it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, John. So we go with our
Amit, sir.
next presentation.
Amit, I
Before you
just had
go
a
ahead.
clarification
Yeah.
that Dr. Anirudh Agarwal is also part of the session. I hope he's there in your list.
He is not there in that list. Dr. Aniruddha's
Yes,
list
but he
name
has
is not
not
there.
in his list of commitments.
Okay, I'll just coordinate with Fairuz about Aniruddha, whether it is there in her hall. Then I'll inform her that he's going to present in our hall.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah. So till then, we take our next presentation by Dr. Parth Rana. Dr. Parth, please start sharing your screen.
Very good afternoon, everyone. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
But your presentation you cannot see only, Bharat.
It's video only, sir. So
Yeah.
I think it's visible now.
Yeah, visible. Start playing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, AIOS, for giving me this opportunity again to present my video. Actually, as we all were discussing about Dr. John, actually all innovators are actually lazy, and laziness is innovation. Laziness is mother of innovation. So as I designed this lens, reason behind that I used to do scleral fixated lenses, and it used to take a lot of time and resources. And we used to work in some tribal area. So it was really difficult to get all the resources there and give that much time to a single patient. So that time I started designing this lens. So what is a nightmare for any of the ophthalmologists doing cataract surgery? It's a nucleus drop. When we see nucleus going down, there's one thing in our mind, like how to put the lens. We can definitely, retina surgeon can definitely remove the nucleus drop, but which lens to put, how to put, and what kind of stability it is going to give, that is always a question. So the time I designed this lens, this is called Rana and Shah's Scleral Tuck IOL. So this is basically a new design. What is the main thing behind this is the flipper, what we are getting here. And it is 4-point fixated, and it is having a quite large optic. So even if alignment is not proper, it can cover the pupil. And due to 4-point fixation, it's quite stable, and it is designed from this price tag label. The innovation behind that was this price tag label. And we have 4 different parts of this. There's a flipper, neck, haptics, and optic. So this is the animated implantation video. So for this, we can go directly from the main port, which we have made for phaco. It can easily go through 2.8 millimeter incision. It's a foldable lens. We just have to inject it into the NT chamber, and with the leading haptic, we can directly hold it from the 20-gauge sclerotomy, which we have already made from the 3 and 9 o'clock position. Even if in traumatic cases, we can make this sclerotomies at different positions also. And once we are pulling it down, pushing it down below the iris, we can hold it from other hand. We can do by handshake technique, or we can do as it's shown here. Simple 20-gauge forceps can pull the flipper out. And on other side, we have to do the same thing. Once this flipper is out, we need to check once that a total flipper is out. Once the total flipper is out, it's very difficult for it to go inside, because 20 gauge from 20 gauge sclerotomy, this flipper is almost double size bigger. So we are tilting it and we are pulling it out. So once it's out, it doesn't go inside. And the haptics are kind of stretchable. So it keeps on its place. Here we can see this is a handshake technique. I have just pushed the lens, and it is we have pulled it out. And as we can see, the flipper is out on one side, and the same thing we can repeat on the other side. Here I have done SSA spiral, because this patient was having trauma, and this flipper is out and the surgery is over. So we don't have to do many of the steps like we have to what we are doing in iris claw lenses or we are doing in sutured lenses. We don't have to do all these steps, and it's quite a simple technique and quite a simple design. Anyone with like just anterior vitrectomy who can do, they can just do this technique. And it's quite a simple thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Parth. It was a fantastic presentation. I think you had seen you in the last time competitions also. You presented this, but only thing is, since last time to this time, why you changed your both hairstyle and a lot of beard and all? That is, I am little bit surprised. I needed to talk to your father. Why is the reason like this? So very nice presentation. I think Somshila, any questions you can ask him.
No, I just, because it's all retina, so was I always watch with my mouth open when you people do your surgeries. So I think that it was, and we have seen this presentation before. So I think it's a very innovative device part. But I'll leave it to my retina colleagues to do that.
Thank you. It's actually made for general ophthalmologists to do the surgery, not to just leave it to retina surgeons. That's why I designed that during my fellowship period.
Wonderful. So can we move on to the next presentation?
You're having the list now, Somshila?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
So,
you can.
yeah. So the next presentation is Dr. Samendra Karkur. Are you here, Samendra? He's talking again about retina stuff, management of dislocated nucleus with the corneal opacity by combined DALK, PPV, phaco fragmentation. Is Samendra here? Vinod, is he here?
Let me just check now.
Sure.
Meanwhile, if we can get another speaker.
Yeah, so the speaker after that is Dr. Nilesh Kumar. And Nilesh, we've heard you before. I think we're looking forward to your talk once again on smartphone-based gonio imaging. I hope
just to interrupt Somshila, Dr. Somshila and Dr. KP, I'm going to leave to the next one because I've got an IC to present.
Sure.
So after Dr. Nilesh, Dr. Saurabh, and then Dr. Aniruddha. And
Yeah.
I've just got a message from the AV team. We are running late, so we need to cut short the discussion. We are running late by 5 minutes.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoy, Amit.
So Nilesh, or you're up
Yes, sir.
next.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. So, good evening, everyone. I would like to thank AIOS Scientific Committee for providing me this opportunity again to present my work on smartphone-based gonio imaging, the past, the present, and the future. I am Dr. Nilesh Kumar, and these are my disclosures. Gonioscopy is not performed as frequently as it should be. 83% of the junior residents are not confident doing it, and half of the patients do not get a baseline evaluation done at a glaucoma clinic. Despite being such a vital part of glaucoma diagnosis, I feel the lacunae is due to the enigma of the skill itself, its dependency on the slit lamp, the chair time it takes during a busy OPD, and the lack of quality trainers. When we searched for an alternative to the gonioscopy, it was this 20 lakh machine just to take a gonio image, or sophisticated softwares to do a 3D reconstruction of anti-segment OCT. All of these are not viable in a resource-sensitive country like ours, the point which we raised in this letter to the editor. Asking question is important, and so is finding a solution to it. We innovated a novel technique using just a 4-mirror gonio lens and a smartphone, which was validated on 65 eyes and was published in the Journal of Glaucoma. The cover art is the testament of the quality of the image that can be obtained using DIGS. But as my mentor, Dr. Ashish Sharma, has told me, no journey of an innovative idea is complete unless it is translated into a product to be used by anyone. So we developed a frugal, one-of-its-kind device, which is now 1 year into the patent process. It is now 2 years into the patent process, compatible with major types of gonio lenses and smartphones. We call it the DIGS Pro. So this is how the device is set up. We place the gonio lens in the adapter, which by design itself aligns centrally with the optics of the smartphone holding segment, where the smartphone, be it Android or iPhone, is snapped fit. The normal camera app is used for clicking the image.
The lens with the holder is applied in normal fashion under topical anesthesia, and the patient is asked to look straight. The smartphone segment aligns beautifully with the lens adapter, and you just click using the camera flash. As simple as that. These are a few sample images we took using Vogue 4 mirror lens, some images using Ocular 3 mirror lens. Recently, we concluded a larger validation trial, which I presented today in the free paper session, where out of 280 images, 80% were of gradable quality. The kappa coefficient between the gold standard slit lamp gonioscopy and device was 0.65, while between two masked graders was 0.82, both implying substantial agreement to classify open and closed angles. It is also a great education tool for the patient. Only 53% of the patients agree for YAG PI when counseled verbally, but when shown their closed angle using DIX Pro, 86% agreed for the prophylactic laser. It takes approximately 4 patients to gain the skill, and optometrists and technicians can be trained very easily. One thesis is underway to validate the device at community level. It can also double up as diffuse anterior segment imaging device due to its inbuilt optics. An app is also in validation stage. It is in the last stage actually, which will not only make the record keeping easier, but will enable the reports to be shared instantly for teleconsultation, and will also give us an opportunity to collaborate for various research projects. One such project is to create a data repository using DIX Pro images, which will then be utilized by machine learning to create an AI overlay in the app itself, so that when a technician clicks an image somewhere in the periphery, an instant notification will tell whether the patient should be referred to the hospital for further evaluation or not. That's how we imagine our future to be. So keep imagining, keep innovating, keep translating, and keep digging. I once again thanks AIOS Scientific Committee for this opportunity.
Yeah, excellent idea, Nilesh. So
Thank
I
you,
was
sir.
always looking at the sort of a innovation. Actually, patient comes into the OPD, then they like a sort of a they'll sit in front of like autorefractometer. Then the machine has to come in such a already. I think one machine from one Japan company already there in the market. It should be automated so that like how routinely some people will have a that fundus camera, like when they come the optos, what optos do, patient in undilated people, it will see the periphery like that.
Yes.
You can think about a device which can know the angles very well. Then
Yes,
because of the 20% of the public is of angle closure glaucoma,
yes.
so that can diagnose early, and a lot of YAG iridotomy you can perform. That's what
Yes.
I'm.
So that's what the idea is. So that machine what you're telling about is from Nidec, I think, and that costs around 20 lakh to take that image. So this uses a Gonio 4 mirror lens, and we can train optometrists. So as they take history and do refraction, after that immediately they can take a non-abrasive, like Vogue lens comes with a contact lens, so it doesn't abrade the cornea. So we can perform further examination on the patient. So that opto itself, he can apply the Gonio lens and take an image, upload on EMR. So when the patient comes to doctor, there is already a 360-degree image in the EMR. So doctor can see and decide if he needs to perform complete slit lamp gonioscopy or to counsel patient for so we are trying that, and we will try to form something more easy to use in further refinement.
Somshila, all yours.
So Nilesh, just remind me, you won the first prize award, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So Nilesh got the first prize award for the National Talent Search, which we did a few months ago for this amazing innovation of his.
Thank you, ma'am.
Great job, Nilesh. I think we'll move on to the next speaker so that we can finish on time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The second last speaker is Dr. Saurabh Kamal. Saurabh, are you there?
Hello.
Yes. Yeah, hi. He had a very interesting sort of a study or unrecognized entity, which he's going to talk about.
Can you see my slide?
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah, can I start now?
Please,
hello.
Please.
Yeah. So my topic is intranasal cyst in congenital nasolacrimal duct obstruction. Nasal endoscopy, as we all know, has transformed the approach in CNLDO with the case-based approach. And this has led to the recognition of these rare intranasal cysts or called mucocele, which are seen primarily with congenital dacryocele. Now, these cysts occur because of the simultaneously common canalicular block functional, which leads to the formation of cyst. These cysts are important because they can cause respiratory insufficiency, recurrence, and also acute acrocystitis. The larger cysts have been described in the literature and their management has been well documented. But what about these cases of intranasal cysts without the dacryoceles? These cases occur because of the congenital malformation at the lower NLT, which leads to the formation of intranasal cyst. So purpose is to describe the clinical features, diagnosis and management outcomes of these intranasal cysts. It was a retrospective case series. All children underwent nasal endoscopic guided probing. On endoscopic, the cysts were divided either as small, if they are completely hidden beneath the inferior turbinate, and large, if they were seen without the need for the medialization of inferior turbinate. All cysts underwent cruciate marsupialization, and only cases with minimal follow-up of 3 months were included. Coming on to the result, over 4 years period, 34 eyes of 33 children were included. The incidence of intranasal cysts was 12%. Mean age was 18.7 months. And history of prior intervention was noted in 56% of the cases, with probing once in 41 and twice in 15% of the cases. Dacryocele accounted for 18% of the cases. So I divided based on the anatomical types and the clinicopathologic types. Anatomical into small and large, and clinicopathologic into simple and complex type. Sac atonicity was noted in about 41% of the cases. Now, all children without dacryocele has small intranasal cyst, and all the children with dacryocele has large intranasal cyst. And within the simple type, the small intranasal cyst accounted for 61% of the cases, and within the complex, small accounted for 87% of the cases. And the mean time to resolution of the epiphora after the probing was delayed in many children because of the sac atonicity, and success rate was 94%. Now, coming on to some cases on nasal endoscopy, this small simple cyst can be noted on medialization of inferior turbinate, is undergoing to perpendicular incision, which is called cruciate marsupialization, with 45-degree probe tilt test and irrigation of fluorescein fluid. Now, this child having acute dacryocystitis was noted to have small white yellowish intranasal cyst, and therefore underwent drainage and systemic intravenous antibiotics. So now this child, after cruciate marsupialization, the thick mucus was seen over the probe, and on further back and forth movement of the 45-degree probe tilt test, the further drainage of the pus can be seen, suggesting that this child has a loculated intranasal cyst. Now, this case was interesting, with having a flat fibrotic intranasal cyst, which can be missed and difficult to identify endoscopically. So to conclude, intranasal cyst can be seen in CNLD with or without dacryocele. And this is the first study to propose the classification of these intranasal cysts. With the help of the nasal endoscopy, inferior turbinate medialization, these cysts can be identified. And the key factors in management are cruciate marsupialization, customized approach, and 45-degree probe tilt test. Hope we can save many children with this identification of pathology from DCR. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurabh. I think Somshila will go into next final speaker.
Yes, sir. The last speaker for this session is Dr. Aniruddha. Sorry, Saurabh, we've just been running out of time. Thank you for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you to AI Scientific Committee.
Nice not seeing you again with all that cap and mask.
I'm sitting in my clinic, so
sorry. Yeah. Hi, Aniruddha.
Hi,
Hello,
Aniruddha.
good morning. Good afternoon. So,
for us, yeah. Good morning to you.
Yes, very good afternoon, and thank you to AIOS for this opportunity. And without much ado, I'll just start off with my presentation. So my name is Aniruddha Agarwal, and I'm at Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what I'm doing in retinal imaging so far. And I have divided my research in retinal imaging into two aspects. One is differentiating and diagnosing retinal diseases, and quantification of retinal pathology. And what we're trying to do is using simple imaging as well as complex devices such as OCT and OCTA to get our answers in the clinic. So the first aspect that we were working on were images of choroiditis and uveitis, where we quantified the lesions into various grades 1, 2, and 3, depending on the severity of the disease. And we realized that those lesions which have grade 3 opacity, which are very yellow in color, have a high chances of recurrence and development of paradoxical worsening. This was published very recently in American Journal of Ophthalmology as clinical and imaging factors with TB choroiditis. And subsequently, what we have done is we have used artificial intelligence sort of platform where we are trying to identify these lesions automatically without sort of manually segmenting them on fundus photographs. And the aim is to automate and develop newer metrics that can help in identify these lesions which are at risk of recurrence and paradoxical worsening. So we try to make inflammations not so intimidating. And the way it works is the short clip which shows you that you just use easily available third-party softwares which can process these images, and you can run actually a very simple macros which analyze fundus photographs, and within a fraction of a second, they can give you the quantification that you need, can give you the area, can mark out the lesion, and you can accordingly feed this into a convoluted neural network. The second aspect and the final aspect I'll be dealing with is OCT to differentiate and diagnose difficult entities. We know that we have lab support nowadays, which is very good. We have PCRs, we have biopsies and advanced staining techniques, but can we do something clinically? Can we use OCT to differentiate between conditions such as toxoplasmosis, retinitis, and lymphoma? So we have been working on certain key OCT features which are diagnostic. For example, you have clots of cells along posterior hyaloid in toxoplasmosis, and you have retrohyaloid hyperreflective spots in toxo, and you have these stalagmite-like deposits in toxoplasmosis. On the other hand, the involvement of only the retina as well as the choroid is a feature of toxoplasmosis, but not so in viral retinitis. So all of these findings are highly specific for toxoplasmosis. And we are trying to develop systems to add these into artificial intelligence protocols so you can diagnose these conditions with a reasonable certainty using artificial intelligence image algorithms. So part of this we have already published in British Journal of Ophthalmology, where we are comparing the OCT features in different etiologies. With our collaboration so far, we have achieved a number of papers in OCTA by using our study group. We also have formed the collaborative ocular tuberculosis study group and also the PGI lymphoma study group. So thank you very much to AIOS for this opportunity, and I'll be happy to end on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Anirudh, for taking time out and presenting this all the way from Cleveland, from Abu Dhabi. Any comments, Dr. Krishna Prasad? Because we have a couple.
Fine.
Yeah, it's just that it's remarkable that Anirudh is yet another, in this session, the really young people achieved quite a bit, and hats off to all the speakers in this session. We do hope that this is something like a platform, or maybe we hope it's a good encouragement for all the youngsters who are there, who have presented, and not just you guys because you came in the top 10, but all the others also who took part. We hope that this is some kind of platform for you to keep working more, innovating more, and certainly going on to the next step, be it going to the vendor or going to publishing it or whatever it may be. So we just hope that happens, and the scientific committee, we really want to see how best we can foster that future relation also.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that, we end the session. Thank you, Dr. KP. Thank you to Amit, who was there earlier, and thanks to all the participants and speakers. And of course, thanks to the hall coordinator, Vinod, tech team, and the AV team. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Somashila ma'am. And
we can stop recording. Thank you very much, Amrita. We can stop recording.